Hey guys, I am Dr. Kim Sage. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and to this video on healing and understanding disorganized attachment style. This is part of a larger series doing kind of a deep dive into understanding the initial relational disturbances we have in childhood in terms of the family of origin we're born into. And I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and so I hope you will consider subscribing and clicking the bell if you'd like to get notified of when I post new videos. Please feel free to share your thoughts in this little growing community. I'm always so grateful for your stories, your thoughts, and any ways that you share. Just make sure that you feel safe enough doing so publicly. Okay, also I post every day on TikTok, sometimes up to 3 times a day. So if you want more content, you're more than welcome to follow me there too. Okay, let's talk about the heart of disorganized attachment. In the research, this was the 4th group of initially could not classify children when we looked at attachment studies and understanding the strange situation. And so within this category is a wide range of behaviors and classifications. And so really what we're talking about here is kids who displayed a range of avoidant, fearful, anxious, disconnected, overly connected to caregivers they didn't really know, all kinds of behaviors. And we see this often in certain types of individuals who struggle. I would say that there's still, ongoing conversation and research around the role of attachment in, let's say, borderline disorders. But the core is that it really is about this inconsistent caregiving. But what's really at the heart of the inconsistency that makes it so much more significant than, just anxious and just avoidant or some kind of crossover is that in this situation, the source of fear is also the source of safety. And so this is in the same parent, meaning that the parent or caregiver you're supposed to go to for safety and attunement and protection and all of that is also the source of fear, meaning that they are frightening or they are frightened. They may have their own states of unresolved trauma, and so they tend to be dissociative or not able to really have a real connection with because they're often in their own traumatized worlds. We can see caregivers described here as aggressive, disruptive, loud in your face, or other ways that are scary to the child. They could also be fearful or tentative and not really engaging, like I said, confused. And oftentimes this parent, really what's happening is all of their dis-ease is spilling over into the child all of the time, most of the time. And so there really is no real way to make sense of the attachment. Now, Patricia Crittenden, you might check her out if you're probably a therapist more so, but she looked at these patterns and broke them down further. And I believe her argument or her belief is that no, there is some organization to the disorganization. And she really breaks down the different types and does a really great job of that. It's a little more complicated, I would say quite a bit more complicated, but really fascinating research and theory and study to look at. But the idea is that that same thing with anxious, where there's an over-involvement in the parent state of mind, is kind of on, full blast in the disorganized style. But what I think is a little concerning is when you read the research, they'll talk about, these were abused kids or, really intense situations. But the reality is that I think even if your parent was, even if they were emotionally or from a, disordered type state, unpredictable, they were never in a way, hurtful to you physically, it doesn't mean that all that psychological chaos doesn't affect us. And I think where we see this for many of us is with parents who were really ragey and unsafe and unpredictable and all kinds of behaviors. We can just be very sort of avoidant and overly anxious. We can really lean in. And that really is from that level of the spectrum all the way up to the very extreme end. The core of the dilemma is that we really didn't have a safe, consistently, not perfectly, but generally consistent source of attachment to go to, because that same source who might love on us one day might be extremely wounding the next, or for, a long period of time, they might even disappear and abandon the child, right? So that's the thing to understand. Now, the first thing you have to know is that you have really oftentimes big swings between your anxiety and your avoidance. And so you want to begin to look at your patterns of, well, where do I get activated and triggered in relationships? Where do I get to the place where I'm kind of feeling that panic in my body, that sympathetic response? And where do I tend to shut down and go to that dorsal vagal, like I talked about in my polyvagal theory and attachment video a few days ago? And I'm going to be posting really quickly in the next few days just a video on how to regulate your body and soothe, combining all of these attachment styles. And so you have to look for patterns, I would say. And then when do you tend to disengage? It's often that when we feel like we're getting too close to someone, or they're going to know us too much, or we've overshared, which is also common, that we then just want to like retreat and kind of collapse and go into that isolating state. So you want to look at those patterns. The next one is to look at your trust issues. There's a very good chance that at the core you don't know how to trust. And that's a whole other conversation that has to be worked on in relationship with others. But you have to also really first start with learning how to trust yourself, that you can extricate yourself from unhealthy relationships or situations. And that really goes to building up your sense of self, learning to self-advocate, learning how to lean into conflict to stand up for yourself, because often in childhood, that was not an option. You know, you are not going to be able to do that. And so you often avoid conflict, and or you go the opposite, like the parent, and rage, and that ends up pushing people away. So you're going to work on your trust issues. Next is, because you experience this increased arousal and mistrust, when people get too close to you, you want to learn how to vet people, right? Learning who is a good fit for me, who is not. And I would say making a list of non-negotiables and qualities in friendships and partnerships, you know, things like name calling or shutting you out or being consistently unreliable. And then looking at how your body responds in arousal, and then how that connects to mistrust. And then learning how, as I'm going to post, like I said, how to soothe that arousal. The next one is, you often keep trying to be in relationship with others, but often find yourself stuck in these patterns. And so this would be a really good place to do some reading and podcasts and research and even therapy on learning how to identify and attract healthy partners, and what you might be doing that might be subconsciously attracting partners or mates who are not a good fit, and learning how to remove yourself from those relationships, but learning how to have a really good understanding of what creates healthy relationship patterns, because you probably don't really necessarily know. You might know up here, but do you know in here? And what feels good in your body in a partner, and what feels unsafe? Learning to talk to that part of yourself and act on it. And then the next one is that you often, like I said, tend to overshare. And so watching where you do that, and or you never tell anything. Understanding the importance of building vulnerability as a hierarchy, right? We go like this: I share, you share. We go back and forth and build connection. And so you want to work on, I made a video I think a few days ago on vulnerability, looking at your own vulnerability and looking at vulnerability in others and working on that as an important issue. The next one is, you often struggle the most, I would say, with feeling out of control, and you really want to work on your own control issues. And so it's very common, for example, in kids with BPD parents, that we can be kind of controlling, right? They looked at the research because we're trying to make sense of an out of control environment. But you may have taken these control issues not only in your feeling out of control, but actually trying to control others, being overly controlling, making sure everything has to be a certain way. And you know, you have to load the dishwasher this way and this way only. I mean, that's probably a whole other issue, but the core is that looking at where you do that, because that is going to push people away. And it is also an illusion that if you just control everything, you will be fine. Now, kind of piggybacking on, like I said, the last couple of videos, it's important to connect to the fact and have gratitude for yourself. That's the next one, that you do know how to manage things, and that control isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's good to try to manage your life and plan and respond. It's just over controlling and looking at where that happens. The next thing is, you tend to struggle with balance more than anything. And so working on balancing your emotions, balancing your life. Do you tend to be a workaholic or overly involved in having everything to do with your family, but no real sense of self? Do you know how to, use substances within a reason? Do you have a balance? Do you have any kind of exercise or meditation? working on that integration and balance is really important. The next thing is these people are often described as bossy, compulsive caretakers, or fearful. And so you want to look at where do those dynamics show up in your life, as I was kind of saying back to control. And so do you tend to try to be controlling and then take care of everyone and become overwhelmed and depleted in your health and things like that? Do you tend to project your fear on every relationship and everyone? And that's important. And then the last two are you often tend to dissociate, and I'll be posting some techniques on grounding, how to work with dissociation. That's a response to your own childhood trauma and your own trauma triggers. And then you may deal with rapidly shifting mood states, and that could be the heart of some kind of disorder or mood disorder. It could just be that you're triggered so much, and learning how to ground and regulate yourself will be helpful techniques. So those are the core of disorganized attachment. We will talk more in the next few videos around how to kind of navigate a lot of this stuff in your body, grounding techniques, soothing your nervous system and why that's so important, and guided imagery. And then I'll be posting my internalized parent protocol, which comes from Dan Brown and David Elliott's book on treating adult disturbances, and we will hopefully find a way to talk about using that as an internal mindfulness, sort of becoming your own inner parent and learning how to reparent yourself and love on yourself in hopefully a new and helpful way. So thanks for watching, guys. Please don't forget to subscribe and click the bell, and I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.